Every choice you make creates a neon echo that resonates through the digital landscape of your life. We follow these echoes to find the stories of survival, hope, and the ultimate triumph of the spirit. Click subscribe now and hear the truth in every single echo.
At my father's retirement party, in front of 22 relatives, my brother said I had been milking my illness for sympathy for 3 years. He said it like a punchline. He'd been drinking since 4 in the afternoon, and he'd grown comfortable with an audience. "She's got her condition," he said, and made air quotes with both hands. "But I've never actually seen her too sick to show up for a free dinner." A few people laughed. My Aunt Louise went quiet. My mother looked somewhere past my shoulder. My father, the man the party was for, the man with his name on the cake, said nothing at all. I didn't argue. I drove home in the dark and sent 3 emails. 4 days later, my brother called me 9 times before lunch. He wasn't calling to apologize. "Welcome to Revenge Scenes. If you're new here, stay with me. This one takes a minute to build, and it's worth the build." I'm 32. I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS, if the acronym is easier. My autonomic nervous system doesn't regulate blood flow correctly when I shift from sitting to standing. On a bad day, getting upright feels like trying to stand on the deck of a ship in rough water. My heart rate spikes, my vision blurs at the edges, and my body spends the next several hours in a low-grade argument with gravity. On a good day, I look like anyone. I look fine. People who only see my good days tend to decide that those are the only days I have. My brother had been deciding that for 3 years. I stopped arguing around the 14-month mark when I realized that every time I tried to explain my body to that table, I was just giving them new material to dismiss. So I sat through the rest of dinner with my hands folded in my lap, and I drove home and I sat at my kitchen table for a while in the dark. Then I opened my laptop. To understand what those 3 emails set in motion, you need to know what I had been doing for my family for the previous 4 years without anyone thinking to call it work. My father spent 30 years as an electrician in the Nashville area. He's 63, recently retired, and he built something over those decades that he's proud of in the way only self-made men are proud, quietly, from the inside, like a structural beam. 4 rental properties, 2 single-family houses in Hermitage, 1 duplex in Madison, 1 townhouse closer to downtown. He bought them one at a time, every time he had enough saved and the math made sense. He used to walk my brother and me through the numbers when we were kids. This one pencils out at 7%. This one's the slow build. You hold it 20 years and it takes care of you. I grew up listening to him talk about those properties the way other fathers talked about sports teams. I paid attention. When I was 27, before the POTS diagnosis, I sat down with my father's property records for the first time. He'd been managing everything in a system that was half spreadsheet and half memory, and when the IRS sent him a CP 2000 notice about unreported rental income, he didn't know what to do with it. My brother was living in Atlanta then. I was the one who happened to be nearby. I spent a weekend going through everything. Matched receipts to Schedule E deductions, pulled depreciation records, filed a formal power of attorney, Form 2848, and became his authorized representative on the IRS account. I drafted the response myself. The proposed liability of $11,400 went away. My father sat at his kitchen table when I told him, and he looked at me the way he used to look at a piece of work he'd done right. "You've got your grandfather's head for numbers," he said. Then, quieter, "Don't make a big deal of it. Your brother worries." I should have stopped there. I didn't. Because that's the thing about being good at something inside a family that needs it. You don't get to stop. You just become the thing that works. Over the next 4 years, I built a system. The properties ran through a shared management platform that I administered. I tracked lease renewals, rent collection, maintenance schedules, and insurance renewals. I filed all 4 Schedule E returns every April. I managed a county property tax appeal for the Madison duplex that ran for nearly 2 years, formal filings, documentation, hearings before the County Board of Equalization, and ultimately got the assessed value reduced by enough to save the family $14,200 over the next 5 years. I handled most of that appeal from my living room. On the days my cardiologist had told me to stay horizontal, I propped myself against the headboard with my laptop on a pillow and kept working. On the days I could sit upright at my desk, I did. The appeal didn't care which kind of day it was. Deadlines don't. Nobody knew about the bad days. Nobody knew about the appeal hearings either. My father knew in the way you know about something you've handed to someone else. He signed what I told him to sign and trusted. The rest would be handled. It was always handled. By 2022, my brother had moved back to Nashville. He bought a house 20 minutes from my parents. He started showing up at the properties, dropping by when a tenant called with something minor, appearing in driveways with a toolbox for jobs the maintenance contractor was already scheduled for. He took photos. He'd post himself outside the Madison duplex with a caption about keeping the family legacy going. He'd Venmo my father for lunch and call it a business discussion. My father ate it up. Proud fathers of capable sons tend to. Here's what my brother didn't know. He didn't know. The IRS power of attorney was still active and in my name. He didn't know there was a property tax notice that required a response by the 3rd week of every January. He didn't know that 2 of the 4 leases had automatic renewal clauses, requiring written opt-out 60 days before expiration. He didn't know the login to the management platform, the EIN for the property accounts, or the name of the tax preparer I worked with every spring. He'd never asked. Asking would have meant admitting there was something he didn't know. And his entire identity, inside our family and out, was built on the assumption that he had everything handled. He had the pictures, he had the captions, he had 11 likes on the duplex photo. I got sick in late 2021. It announced itself gradually. Fatigue I kept blaming on work, heart palpitations I attributed to too much coffee, and then a morning when I stood up from the couch and slid straight down the wall because my legs had simply stopped cooperating. I was in the ER by noon. 8 months, 3 specialists. By the time I had the diagnosis, I'd lost 1 job, rebuilt a freelance client base, and learned to schedule my life around my body's actual rules instead of anyone else's expectations. I wore compression garments. I monitored my sodium intake. I kept a log of triggers: sleep, temperature, prolonged standing, and stress. Chronic, sustained stress, my cardiologist explained, is one of the most reliable aggravators of autonomic dysfunction. She documented it. My family saw me on good days. Those are the days family dinners happen. My brother, who lived 20 minutes away and saw me maybe 4 times a year, decided those good days were the complete picture. "She looks fine to me," had been said about me, in front of me, more times than I could count. It is not a sentence people say about someone who spent 2 years managing a county property tax appeal. Let me tell you about a specific Wednesday, not because it was dramatic, but because it was typical. It was a bad symptom day. I'd been flat on my back most of the morning. At 2 in the afternoon, I propped myself up against the headboard with the laptop on a pillow because the county assessor's office had sent a response to our most recent filing that required a rebuttal within 5 business days. I drafted the rebuttal, 3 hours, filed it electronically from my bedroom, compression socks on, electrolyte drink on the nightstand. 2 days later, my brother posted a photo of himself driving past the Madison duplex. "Keeping an eye on the family investment," the caption said. 13 people liked it. That was the arithmetic I lived inside for 4 years. I almost didn't go to the retirement party. It was a bad week, and I knew the drive and the standing around would cost me at least a full recovery day afterward. But it was my father's party, so I went. I made it through dinner. I made it through the toasts. My brother gave a speech about how proud he was to be helping steward the family's real estate legacy, and I sat very still and thought about the county appeal documents in my email from the previous March. After the cake, when the room had loosened, he said what he said. Milking it for sympathy. Air quotes around the word condition. My aunt saying she looked fine to her. My father not saying a word. I drove home. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop at 10:43 in the evening and sent 3 emails. The first, to the county assessor's office. I withdrew as the authorized contact for all 4 property accounts. Future correspondence would now route directly to my father's mailing address. The second, to the IRS. I revoked Form 2848. The power of attorney that had made me my father's official authorized representative for 4 years, effective immediately. Any active or pending matters would now go directly to him. The third, to the property management platform. I removed my administrator credentials and transferred account ownership to the primary holder. I archived my own access. Then I closed the laptop and went to sleep. Day 2, my father received a piece of correspondence he didn't understand. A follow-up on the current year's depreciation documentation, requesting confirmation from the authorized representative. He called me. I didn't answer. Day 4, my brother called. Hey, something came in the mail about the properties. Do you know anything about that? Voicemail. Day 4, call 4, I went on the management platform and my login doesn't work. Did something change? Day 4, call 9, I need you to call me back. This is actually serious. I didn't answer. Not because I was punishing anyone. Because I had answered enough calls over 4 years that had never once been placed to say thank you. On day 6, my mother called. Her voice was careful the way it gets when she's frightened and trying not to show it. There's a letter from the IRS, she said. Your father doesn't understand it, and your brother can't get into the system. We don't know who to call. The IRS number is on the letterhead, I said. The platform has a customer support line. Quinn. She started, then caught herself. Honey, we don't know the account information. We don't know the passwords. We don't know what any of this means. I didn't either the first time, I said. It gets clearer. Then I asked her to put my brother on. She did. What's the EIN for the property accounts? I asked. Silence. What's the current IRS case number on the letter in front of you? More silence. What's the lease expiration date on the Madison duplex? He was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't have those memorized. Right, I said. I'll text you the name of a CPA who handles rental properties. She's good. She'll need about 6 weeks of back records to get up to speed. I hung up. What happened in the following days came to me in pieces, mostly through my Aunt Louise, who had gone quiet at that dinner table instead of laughing, and who'd texted me the morning after my call with my brother. I'm sorry about the party. I didn't know things had gotten this bad. I want you to know I see it. From her, I learned that my brother had spent an afternoon trying to access the management platform using my father's email and various guest passwords. The customer service representative told him the administrator had voluntarily removed their own access, and that recovering archived data required documentation proving authorization. My brother had Instagram captions. He did not have documentation. I learned that the IRS letter was time-sensitive, a request related to a depreciation audit on the Hermitage properties, requiring a response within 45 days. My father, who had been an electrician his entire working life and had never dealt with the IRS without me, didn't know what he was looking at. He called the number on the letter. The representative told him his authorized representative had been removed. He was now the sole contact on the account. He sat down in his kitchen and called my mother into the room. The county property tax appeal, the one I'd spent 2 years building, the one with $14,000 at stake, had a hearing scheduled 8 days after I sent the emails. No one appeared, because no one knew it existed. The appeal was dismissed for failure to appear. That last part cost the family real money. I want to be honest. When I found out, I sat with something that felt close to regret. Not enough to undo anything, but enough to feel it, and to let myself feel it, and to understand that some losses are the natural cost of finally telling the truth. There's something I hadn't said to anyone outside my cardiologist's office. My POTS had gotten significantly worse 18 months before the retirement party. New symptom clusters, more frequent flares. My cardiologist adjusted my medication twice. We talked at length about triggers, and she asked me, at one of those appointments, to identify the primary sources of sustained stress in my life. I told her about my job. I told her about the particular isolation of an invisible illness. And then I told her about my father's properties, about the IRS correspondence, the appeal hearings, the platform administration, the lease tracking, the quarterly check-ins that had never stopped because I had never been asked to stop. I had simply been expected to continue, and so I had continued. She wrote it all down. In my chart, under identified stressors, she documented that I managed significant financial and administrative responsibilities for family members without compensation or acknowledgment, and that this had been ongoing for 4 years, and that it was likely contributing to my symptom escalation. I have that documentation. I had been sitting on it for 18 months without fully knowing why. I also have an email. My father sent it at 11:17 on a Tuesday night, about 2 years into this arrangement, after an alarming IRS notice had come in and he'd called me in a panic. I talked him through it over the phone. An hour later, the email arrived. It was short. I don't know what I'd do without you, kiddo. You've always been the one who knows how to handle things. Please don't tell your brother how serious this got. He worries and I don't want him to feel bad. He didn't want my brother to feel bad. I had saved that email for 2 years without fully letting myself understand why. I understood it now. 3 weeks after the retirement party, I asked for a family meeting. Just the 4 of us. They agreed. I think because they needed me to agree to come back to the accounts and hadn't found another path in. I drove to my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. My brother was already there with his wife Amanda. My father was in his chair by the front window. My mother came out of the kitchen when I arrived, drying her hands on a dish towel, waiting. I sat down. I didn't bring a folder. You said I've been faking, I said to my brother, at the party. In front of everyone. He started to say he hadn't meant it like that. What's the EIN on the property accounts? He looked at my mother. What's a Form 2848? Silence. What's the lease expiration on the Madison duplex? Nothing. There was a county tax appeal hearing 8 days ago. Nobody showed up. The appeal was dismissed. The family just lost $14,200 because the case was closed for failure to appear. My mother's hand tightened around the dish towel. I managed every piece of the financial infrastructure of these 4 properties for 4 years, I said. Every IRS filing, every tax appeal, every lease renewal and software update and correspondence and quarterly check-in. I did it from my couch on the days I couldn't stand up, without my vision going dark. I did it in compression garments, and during medication adjustments, and in every gap between symptom flares. My cardiologist has documented in my medical chart that the stress of managing this arrangement contributed to my condition getting worse. I have that in writing. I took out my phone and read my father's email out loud, the whole thing, including the part about not telling my brother, because he worries, because he didn't want him to feel bad. My brother looked at my father. My father looked at the floor. You knew, my brother said quietly. It wasn't accusatory. It was the sound of someone doing arithmetic and not liking the answer. My father didn't respond. Was gripping the chair arms the way people grip things when they're trying to stay, very still. I know what the last 4 years had looked like from inside his chest. His daughter had gotten sick. His legacy needed managing. And asking the sick one to carry it, while telling himself she was fine, she could handle it, she didn't mind, was easier than looking at what he was actually doing. So he'd let my brother be the story. He'd let me be invisible. Because invisible is easier than guilty, and proud men who have built real things do not easily sit with the possibility that they cost someone something they can never give back. He had looked at my bad days and needed them not to be real. Because if they were real, his phone call at 11 on that Tuesday night had made them worse. And that was not a thing he knew how to be. My mother tried once to redirect. She mentioned dinners they'd brought during my worst flares, calls they'd made to check in. Name one IRS form, I said. She stopped. I'm not here to punish anyone, I said, and I meant it. I'm here because I'm done being the infrastructure that runs quietly in the background while someone else takes the picture. I've found a CPA who handles rental portfolios. Her name is Arlene. She's agreed to take over the accounts. It'll cost $4,500 for the first year of service. That's my last act on these files. Finding her and transferring the records. After that, the properties are yours to manage in every sense of the word. My father started to say something about not needing a stranger to handle his business. You've had a stranger handling it for 4 years, I said. You just called her your daughter and didn't pay her. That was the thing I'd come to say. So I said it and then I left. The rest arranged itself in the weeks that followed the way these things do. Not dramatically, but in a quiet redistribution of what everyone knew. Arlene took over. During her initial review, she confirmed that the records I'd left were well organized and the filings were current. She said so in an email she copied my father on. He forwarded it to me without a message, which I understood to be the closest thing to acknowledgment he could manage in writing. My brother sent one text. It said, I didn't know any of that was happening. I believed him. And then I thought about how that was exactly the point. He hadn't known. He'd never asked. He'd posed for the photos and narrated the story and been rewarded for both. And when it turned out there was a whole building behind the backdrop, he'd had the luxury of being surprised. That surprise was a luxury paid for, with 4 years of my Tuesday nights. I didn't respond. My cardiologist noted at my 6-month follow-up that my symptom frequency had decreased. Fewer flares, better baseline. She asked what had changed. I told her I had stopped carrying something that wasn't mine. She wrote that down too. I still see my parents, not often, and not as the person who arrives with solutions. I visit and I leave when I want to, and I bring nothing I haven't chosen to bring. A few weeks ago, I sat with my father on the back porch, and after a long silence, he said, quietly and without looking at me, I should have said something at the party. Not that I was right. Not that he was sorry, just that he should have spoken. It wasn't enough to repair anything. Some things don't get repaired. They just get told the truth, and the truth becomes the thing you both sit with, and eventually the sitting gets easier. My brother and I are cordial at family events. His wife Amanda texts me sometimes. A photo of their kids, a question about a recipe. I respond when I feel like it. I don't feel a particular way about any of it. That's what nobody tells you about the end of a long resentment. It doesn't feel like winning. It just feels like your hands are empty and you finally get to decide what goes in them. I started building my own client base this year. Small businesses, mostly, exactly the kind of work I had been doing for free for a family that called it laziness. I charge fair rates. I take on exactly as many clients as my body allows on any given week. On bad days, I work from the couch with my feet up, and nobody makes air quotes about it. My father's properties are managed. His legacy is intact. The filings are current, the leases are tracked, the IRS correspondence goes to someone who knows what to do with it. Her name is Arlene. She gets paid. For the first time in 4 years, so do I.